Hey guys, Ken Kunum, North Star Technology Group, and today we're going to be talking about cybersecurity, what's going on in healthcare. And again, many of you guys have a reason why you are attending today. Maybe you know somebody that's gone through a cybersecurity breach, maybe you've had one yourself. But regardless, it's always a good idea to be able to get educated and be part of the community of building cybersecurity awareness as part of a culture in your organization. I always talk about how this is not a technology problem, it's a leadership problem. So for those of you that are leaders in your organizations, kudos to you for attending. So what are we going to talk about? Well, what's going on? What is the impact? Who's impacted by this? And we'll be talking a little bit about 23andMe. It is a one of the more recent stories in the news, and kind of what's going on there. What's the cost? What do you have control over? And of course, how can we use this to actually as a leverage for growth or as an opportunity? Again, my name's Ken Kunum, North Star Technology Group. Our sole purpose really is to help healthcare providers protect their profits and their people from bad guys, and at the same time, of course, help them get more efficiencies and productivity from their infrastructure and IT. Again, I like to call us superhero or small business and healthcare superheroes. So what is really going on? Well, um, obviously, cyber attacks are way up, right? We talk about the threat landscape is kind of an evolving and changing environments. And most people believe, of course, that their IT teams are taking care of it. That's not always the case. Oftentimes, an IT department or technology department or internal IT staff are more focused on providing infrastructure for the environment. So they are really interested in performance and capacity and some of these items. And although some of the things kind of overlap, like business continuity is kind of an important IT thing as well as a resilience thing from the cybersecurity side, not everything kind of overlaps. And so, of course, while internal IT departments are crucial in managing that technology infrastructure, cybersecurity does require a unique set of skills, resources, and knowledge. And according to Inside Integrity 360, it's a polling organization that we use a lot. Nearly 80% of organizations believe that their cybersecurity resilience is not sufficient. So there's some sort of gap between what people are investing in their IT and cybersecurity and what they're really getting from the dollars. So who does this impact? I often use this analogy that I will often ask when I'm doing speaking engagements. I'll ask for a raise of hands. How many in the room have had a cybersecurity or have had a car accident or know somebody that's had a car accident, right? And almost always the answer is, a few handful. But lately what's happening is when I ask the second question of the room, how many people know somebody that's had or has had a cybersecurity incident or breach, more people are actually raising their hands. We're actually starting to see more people that know of people that have had cybersecurity breaches than car accidents, which is kind of crazy. The lone exception is when I speak to accident and injury attorneys. Um, but these breaches actually result in real and actual downtime. If you've been paying attention to the news at all, 23andMe is kind of been out there. Now, their breach isn't necessarily current. It happened in 2023. But the impacts of that breach are substantial, and we're really, really starting to see the peak of what's happening with them. What happened is they had a cybersecurity incident, a bunch of records were stolen. And of course, this became public news, which it has to, right, based on the state's breach notification laws. And during the past year and a half, what 23andMe has started to slow as far as getting new subscriptions. They're starting to lose customers. And they ended up just recently, this week, actually filing for bankruptcy. Just that step alone has spiraled this business now. The Attorney General for the state of California actually went public suggesting that people cancel their service and delete their data. There is very little that 23andMe can do to salvage this. Their CEO stepped down, and they are in the process of trying to take their business to bid to try to have somebody buy them. What was a $4 billion valuation less than 10 years ago now is less than I can't even speculate, but it's several billion dollars less than what it was previously. Um, so obviously this has a related element, right, to other healthcare providers. The idea, of course, is to try to be able to prevent this stuff from happening, and of course, being able to deal with it if it does. Um, so again, what is the cost? And I'm going to continue to talk a little bit more in about 23andMe. And again, this was a several billion-dollar issue. And when most organizations think of having a cybersecurity breach, obviously there's ranges of the severity of this. In this case, a simple breach or a breach, I don't think many of the leadership anticipated that this would result in a bankruptcy claim and having a scramble of their customers trying to delete their data. So obviously we're seeing a substantial financial losses. The financial losses are related to the reputational damage, right? So this case in this organization, obviously they have an important need to have an established trust, right? Because this is very personal information that people are giving. It's their DNA. It's who they are, right? It's connections to all of their family and all of their relatives. And so when this event happens, the reputation gets damaged and people start to leave. I haven't seen anything about regulatory fines, but I'm very certain that the Office of Civil Rights, Health and Human Services is going to have some sort of say in this, and there's probably going to be some sort of fines when it relates to HIPAA compliance. Of the organizations that we've stepped through and helped walk through HIPAA compliance audits after a breach, it could take years before any type of findings is made. So that stuff is coming. And of course, we talked about distrust. When your own state's attorney general tells the residents, "Hey, get out and take your data," I can't even imagine. And finally, the C-level turnover. It's like we're hitting 5 for 5. Their CEO actually stepped down. Stuff is expensive. So what do I have control over? What do you have control over? Right. Well, obviously, you have control over how proactive you are in managing your risk, who you invest in as a trusted partner, and the speed of which you move, right? So in our example of being proactive, right, is starting with the cybersecurity risk assessment. And I think this might be a good segue to talk about what the new HIPAA rule changes are starting to unwind, I guess, in here in 2025. The first one, of course, is you need to have a cybersecurity risk assessment, and this has to happen on an annual basis. One thing I want to note, for those of you that have any understanding of how HIPAA compliance works, is there is an idea of an addressable control, and what HHS was trying to do with addressable is say, hey, this is super important. We really think you should do this thing, but if you can demonstrate that it is cost prohibitive, or we just don't have the capability to do this, or it has such a huge business impact, we just can't, that as long as you would document that, that would be okay. With the new rule changes, they are eliminating all of the addressable rules. So anything that used to be addressable will now become mandatory. And I think you might be surprised, a list of some of the items and controls that were formerly addressable, where you could, somehow document that you are unable to achieve it and now have to. Encryption is the first one. Encryption is no longer addressable. You have to have it for all stored and transmitted. So data at rest and data in transit of ePHI. I bet that everyone's like, well, I assumed that encryption was required. Well, it wasn't necessarily. Now it is. MFA, multi-factor authentication, right? The ability to provide 2 forms of ID when you log into sensitive information. I'm sure many of you thought, oh, I thought that was mandatory. Well, it was addressable, obviously, for organizations that had the capability to do it. It was required, but now it is mandatory for everybody. I mentioned the annual cybersecurity risk assessments. You must conduct and document a detailed CSRA, including network inventories and threat evaluations. Um, you need to have a technology asset inventory. Again, this is required. And so obviously having a good understanding of what assets you own when it comes to IT, that could be your endpoints, it could be your network infrastructure, it could be your servers, and applications. And you need to be able to have that current. You need to do penetration testing, which that's kind of a new one. So there is a difference between a vulnerability assessment and a penetration test. The vulnerability assessment is what a lot of organizations do, and that is the act and the process of going and identifying your assets, right? And then identifying if there are vulnerabilities to those assets, right, that a bad guy could exploit. And depending on what those are, right, they should be remediated, right, or there should be some sort of compensating controls. And the best example of this would be an unpatched system, right? That is a vulnerability. So if we know that, hey, there is a vulnerability in this version of the software, that is discovered during a vulnerability assessment. A penetration test, on the other hand, is actually going through the exercise of trying to exploit those vulnerabilities that are found and try to actually get through and get into the data, right? Obviously, there's a sensitivity in doing a penetration test, right? Because it's essentially hacking into the system. Um, Penetration tests are going to be required with the new HIPAA rule. If you are a current customer of ours and work with Due North Information Security, AJ on our team is going through the process of getting up to speed on the pen testing process that we will be going through. Um, there is enhanced cybersecurity awareness training that needs to be in place. And again, most people are probably doing some form of education when it comes to awareness. Now there is some requirements that employees need to have this done within 30 days of being employed and every year after that. Um, Incident response plans. This is a biggie, right? We talked a little bit about the blur between IT and cybersecurity, and one of them is resiliency and the ability to recover data. So business continuity plans and incident response plans, right? The importance of documenting those things. We're in the process, of course, of reaching out to most of our customers to get the um, incident response plans completed, as well as update the business continuity plan. So if you heard from us, if you heard from AJ on our team, please reach out to do that. Um, Next is the stronger access control measure. I'm not going to go into detail of that. That's basically how we control access to data. Um, Business associates are actually becoming more and more of a target, right? So one of the things that the new HIPAA rule will have is expanded business associate accountability. So anybody that is a BA for you, that you have BA agreements, you need to make sure that they provide written proof of security measures that they are covered themselves. So it's not just a matter of signing a BA and saying, hey, if we find, there's a data breach, we report it. The BAs have to document their cybersecurity posture as well. And then, of course, just more detailed documentation. And obviously, we always want to improve on the complexity of the passwords that we're using. But those are some of the new rules. Again, we're in the process right now of going through the approval. I expect to hear some stuff soon. Again, we will be having a more detailed deep dive. Mark Schlater and I are going to be putting on a HIPAA compliance rule change webinar here coming out. But if you want to talk a little bit more about what's happening specifically in your organization, hit that QR code or go to info.northstar-tg.com and book some time with me. I have a few more minutes to answer any questions if anybody has any specific questions that they would like to talk about. So to make sure that I opened up the chat. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to fire it in there. All right, Amber says one's in the Q&A. Why don't I see the Q&A here? Uh, Okay, so I got a question about penetration test. So for pen test, would we know when that is going on or when it's happening, or is it done without notice to make it more realistic? Yeah, so that's a really, really good question. So there's a liability and a legal element to penetration testing that we have to consider. So that is a very, very, very valid question, right? We want this to be as realistic as possible. At the same time, we can't just try to break into a customer's network, even if they are a signed customer of ours. So typically what we would do is there would be a list of people that are in the know, right? And that's most often the highest senior level executives of that organization that are aware, and we script out exactly what we're going to do, right? So there are no surprises. And then we perform the pen test. But that's a very, very, very good question. Ultimately, we want it to be a surprise because otherwise it's not realistic. Anybody have any other questions? Um, yeah, when is the in-depth HIPAA webinar? Bob, I know, and I appreciate your patience. Thank you. I know you've been waiting for this. So we will be setting that up. I will be reaching out to Mark actually this afternoon to talk through when we want to do that. Part of the challenge is um, getting the most recent set of comment questions and challenges, and then putting that together into a webinar. So it'll be coming up. I would like to say, I know we've got, I want to plug another one. We actually have an artificial intelligence webinar here coming up on April 10th. I know there are a lot of our customers and a lot of people that are really, really interested in AI. It's kind of the thing, right? And so we will be doing an AI webinar here on April 10th. And so it will have to be sometime after that. Best case would be sometime around the end of April, might be early May, first week in May. Um, but artificial intelligence has a big impact on cybersecurity and even with some of the stuff that we're doing with compliance. So it's kind of an interesting topic. Any other questions? All right. Yeah, so we have the recording. We can send this out, but I know most of you are really, really interested in the deep dive on the new HIPAA rule changes, which we will be firing up here soon. I encourage you guys to check out our presentation on artificial intelligence. It's not specific about healthcare, but just for this audience, I am actually going through some training right now through Stanford University on artificial intelligence, specifically for healthcare applications. So as that starts to play out, expect to hear more from me on that. This is more of a general productivity driven conversation about how artificial intelligence can help businesses. We use it every single day, even if it's on a small scale. But the concern still is anchored around the need of data privacy and cybersecurity. So even with AI, everything kind of comes back to that anchor of cybersecurity and privacy protections. All right, guys. If that's it, I will let everybody go. Again, I appreciate your time. Reach out to me if you guys have any questions or want to talk more about this stuff. Otherwise, I will see you either next week on this call again or during our AI presentation on April 10th. Thank you.